Hi everyone, welcome back to the Toffee Blues, your source for all things Everton. I'm joined today by Terry and Owen, and we are going to be previewing Everton's match at the King Power Stadium at Leicester City. We'll get straight into it. Owen, I'm going to ask you first, mate. What team do you think Everton should line up with against Leicester? What team's going to hurt Leicester City?
I would play the exact same team that played Chelsea, because I
Yeah.
think I'm a great believer that you don't change a winning team, and unless Seamus Coleman's fit, I couldn't think of a single change I would make. And it's quite basic, but I think once you've got the momentum of a result, of a performance, I wouldn't look to change. The only reason I think it might be changed is bearing in mind the busy schedule we've got coming, but I feel like we could get away with a couple of changes against Arsenal more than we could against Leicester. Top side,
Definitely.
they're in the top five the last couple of seasons. You've got players that can hit you. They're a bit Jekyll and Hyde, admittedly. Rogers done a good job. Got some good players. So that bearing in mind, I would take the blueprint from Saturday into Leicester and just keep it rolling. I mean, I wouldn't change anything.
Terry, same question for you, mate. Would you make any changes against Leicester? Simple as.
No, I wouldn't expect any. There's only two players who sort of throw a question mark up. Like James Rodriguez and Seamus Coleman. Do they come back in the team? But fortunately, in many ways, those two players need managing fitness wise this month, especially. They've picked up a couple of injuries this season. Coleman more so than James. But you're going to have to manage them very closely. And if the team has put in such a good shift against Chelsea, it's a very good opportunity to just stick with that same team. Expect both of them to come in for the Arsenal game, but for the Leicester game, stick with the same team because it did such a good job against Chelsea. And Leicester are going to offer a lot of the same threat. It's not as if we're coming off the Chelsea game and then we're going to go and play, Burnley, who are not going to play the same way as Chelsea played, or a team like that where you need to ask different questions. Wasn't dragging on Burnley there, when I was just saying, you're going to need the same performance from the. You're going to need the same performance from the Everton team against Leicester that we had against Chelsea, because they're also a top attacking team as well. So yeah, I agree with that one. Same team, and just manage some of the injured players in the games coming up.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially since, in my opinion anyway, a lot of Leicester's players have got similar capabilities to Chelsea, and I think they're going to try and hurt us in the same way Chelsea did. I think, and with how good that team did against Chelsea, it's hard to see how you could make any excuses for any other players, barring if Seamus Coleman's fit and if James Rodriguez is fit, because then you've obviously got a bit of a selection headache. But how can we hurt Leicester? I'll go to Owen first because I'm interested to know. Do you think Leicester have any real weak spots that we can look for?
The real weak spot of Leicester, and I put this out when Fulham beat them the other week, is let them have the ball all afternoon. Let them play 60 passes in their own half before they leave it, and then if it's a rinse and repeat performance from Saturday, I feel we'll get something. And I would do the exact same, because we're not in this business to look pretty or to impress anyone or to get plaudits from the Athletic or the neutrals about how our Buccaneer style plays got us in the top four. We're not here to impress anyone. We're here to get points. If you don't like how Everton play, then turn the telly off, because we're here to get points and nick it 1-0 for as far as I'm concerned, and then go and have a real good go at Arsenal on Sunday. Be aggressive in that one. But this is the one for me. Keep a clean sheet mentality, and can we nick it with a moment?
Yeah, you mentioned that in the extra time for the Chelsea game, the clean sheet mentality, Owen, and how we need to carry it in. And I think it could be a rinse and repeat performance. The way we defended against Chelsea and hit them on the counter attack. That can really benefit us, because it worked so well against Chelsea. Why not go for it again against Leicester? And as you said, they will try and keep
everyone's
the ball.
got clarity. If you don't change anything, to keep the same team, the same tactics, everyone's got clarity of thought about what to do in every situation, because it worked the other day. They'd already been working on that for a week. Just keep it rolling. Just keep the points coming. keep it tight at the back. And then again, we got a penalty on Saturday. I don't expect a penalty again, 2 games in the run, but a set piece or a bit of quality from one of our front players. And then we'll see if we win the game, but get that clean sheet, and then we've got a real good chance of winning the game.
Especially with the fact that Gylfi Sigurdsson's set pieces were an absolute trash on Saturday. I think that.
I know, yeah. One of them went right into the keeper's arms, did he?
Yeah.
Normally over it, one or under it.
It's obviously a massive talking point at the moment, and I've seen Sky Sports use a graphic on Twitter. That I think it's only 4 teams in the whole of the Premier League is going to have supporters in. With the cap at 2,000. Terry, Leicester are one of the teams that aren't going to have supporters. How much do you think that's going to affect them?
Won't affect them at all because they're still used to it. It might affect us because you could see when our fans were in the stadium, it gave us that lift. I don't think it had any impact on Chelsea because it wasn't enough fans to cow another team. But Everton's players gave that extra 10-15% because they were buoyed by the fact that the supporters were back in the stadium. So I don't expect it to have much of an impact on teams who've not had it. Like the London teams, for example, have had it and had it taken away. That could impact them.
Yeah.
And if it happens to any of the teams who've still got it, South Coast and the Liverpool teams. But I hope to see the best of both worlds, that because there's no fans in the away grounds, we still continue our good away forms under Ancelotti. But then we get the other side of it where we come back to Goodison because there's a crowd presence. We get that improved form there. I'd like it to work out that way. I don't expect us to be as good against Leicester as we were against Chelsea for that very reason, but there's no reason why that should knock us completely for a loop because it's not like we've got used to the fans again yet, you know what I mean? So I feel for any group of supporters who can't go back in the stadium because I haven't watched that Everton game. It's made such... It's just for me watching as a fan, I wasn't there, just for anyone who doesn't know, but to watch on the telly and just think this is what it should have been. We've all got used to no fans, and now that we've got fans back, even in a very small, very limited capacity, I was like, I've been watching Sunday League or pre-season games.
Yeah, 100%,
I've been watching,
Harry, yeah, 100%.
I've been watching not real football for months and didn't realise, and now that I've got a little bit of the real football back, I've realised how much better it is. So
yeah, 100%.
I want
a glimmer of real football back for 90 minutes, and it was so good to see. And people made the point as well. The fact that it was only 2,000, I think, created a bit more of an echo and a bit more of an atmosphere between those 2,000 fans. Because there was only 2,000 of them, I think those fans did a really good job at rallying each other up and trying to get behind the team. Maybe controversially, even more than if it was a full stadium and we'd been on a bad run. Those 2,000 fans knew that they had to make a difference, and it's cliche, but we had 12 men against Chelsea because that Gladys Street made a massive, massive difference. And I think had Leicester had it and been taken away, we'd be favourites because obviously they've learned to play without it, and we've seen them against Brighton the other night. They were superb. So I want to ask you the same. Do you agree with that? Do you think is playing in front of an empty stadium going to affect either team, especially after ourselves playing in front of 2,000 fans on Saturday night?
I feel like the extra sort of lift we got from that has been taken away. I mean, it would have been Leicester fans, so I mean, it doesn't really affect us. I feel like we could just take the game. I feel like if we were playing Arsenal next week and we'd just been a Goodison 2,000 and we wouldn't have it next week, then I would feel like that sort of takes it away because we just had it on our own ground. And going to Leicester, I don't feel like it will make much of a difference. I feel like this is just one for sort of getting the game plan ready and sort of executing it. I do have a question for Terry because I also mentioned this before. Terry, would you drop as deep as we did against Chelsea?
Yeah, all day. I'd drop deeper if anything, because Jamie Vardy. It's not rocket science. They've got better pace up front than Chelsea have. Chelsea had Olivier Giroud up front. They've got Jamie Vardy. So playing the low block and hitting on the counter is the order of the day for me.
He's made a great point there, Owen. Because you mentioned in the Chelsea extra time about we've got 2 low block centre halves with Yerry Meader and Michael Keane. Leaving them two need to drop deep, because if Jamie Vardy gets a step ahead of them, they're not catching him. We've conceded the goal.
Well, I remember a few years ago when we went to Leicester, we got beat 2-0. And Unzi's all passionate, chest pumping blue stood on the halfway line and he annihilated us. He made us look like a right idiot with Williams and I think Keane. Honest to God, I think Vardy was walking and he was still quicker than the two of them. So I feel like if we play on the halfway line, it's gonna be a long night.
I mean, we had a little bit. Yeah, go on. Sorry, Owen.
And then, so I was just asking Terry that because I don't want is us drawing 0-0 on Wednesday night and going, back to Big Sam football, are we? Let's be realistic here. We've got to get points. People don't like it, but it's the way it is. We're going to tough them up against tough teams. Let's grind some results out.
100%, yeah. Good point there, Owen. And we've had we've got to remember, we've got to try and go in with a bit of more confidence attitude, because it worked against Chelsea. I think there was a bit of a different attitude there, and I think obviously the fans helped to a certain extent. But they mentioned about how Carlo Ancelotti mentioned the fixture against Chelsea last season. The belief was there. It was the game under Duncan Ferguson, and about how we did believe in ourselves, and a lot of that carried us through, and it was a proper Everton performance. And that could carry through again against Leicester, because we've had a bit of joy against them recently. We've not. They're not. I wouldn't call them one of our bogey teams, and we won the last fixture against them. So, I think we could get joy against them, to be honest. One more thing I just want to mention is, obviously there's going to be a few. Owen, I'll go to you first. Which Leicester players do you think we really need to look out for?
The main man up front, Jamie Vardy. He's a machine. He's a goal machine. He's unbelievable. And I can't speak more highly of him. I think if you give him a chance, he'll score it. Proper centre forward. He's a leader for them. He's brilliant. Apart from him, I don't know if Ndidi's fit. He's a really top midfielder. He's not going to aid in the final. Well, I'll say that he'll score screaming up, but he's not someone who affects the game much in the final third. But he's brilliant at what he does. Johnny Evans, I'm a big fan of Johnny Evans. And the form player this season for me, apart from Vardy's been James Justin. I think he's played really well. I think he's a really positive player. So for me, I think their best players are Evans, Justin, and Ndidi and Vardy.
And obviously Maddison's there as well. Had a great game against Brighton. Scored 2 good goals.
I'm not going to mention James Maddison.
Terry, I'll ask you the same question. Players we need to look out for.
Yeah, you can't look much further than Jamie Vardy, can you? But you took it off me toe there with James Maddison. He's obviously scored 2 against Brighton, and going into the game in good form. And we tend this season, if we concede, we struggle with players like that operate in the sort of half space between midfield and the defence. Like Ward-Prowse comes to mind. Against Southampton, and Bruno Fernandes against Man United. So that type of player has been a bit of an Achilles heel. So, got to watch out for him. And I don't know whether it could see a tactical tweak in the middle of the game, because certainly in the home game after the first lockdown, and Carlo Ancelotti brought on Tom Davies to just sort of mark the space, and it's completely nullified Maddison in that game. Wouldn't recommend starting like that, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's causing murder throughout the game to see a similar type of substitution made in the game, because he is a very effective player, certainly against us.
Yeah, I think going back to Maddison there, I think the same game plan against Leicester could work, that we used against Chelsea, could work really well, because we marked a similar player in I believe Mason Mount. He had a couple of good chances, and we stopped him scoring a couple of times. And I'm not saying that either's as good as the other. I'm really not sure, but I think I always think
we all know Gareth Southgate's opinion.
Yeah, 100%. But no, I think players like that, I think we can keep them quiet if we really put our minds to it. And we play the same way we did against Chelsea. We can mark players out of games. We've seen it with Giroud, hardly really got a touch against us, and players like Mount and Havertz and Werner. So I'm quite hopeful. Obviously, I think that the Chelsea win's gone a long way to making me more hopeful. But yeah, before we go, I just want to get both of your score predictions. Terry, I'll start with you. Score prediction.
Go for another 1-1.
Sensible. I think a 1-1's a realistic score to be hoping for. Obviously, we want to win every game, but if we can get a draw out of this game, I won't be too disappointed with that. Owen?
Oh, I'll take a point down there. Every year down there. They're a really good
Tough
side.
place to go.
They're a team that they're the anti-Leeds, in my opinion, because Leeds have got this order that there's some force to be reckoned with when they're not, they're a bit crap, and we just played them like they were. Leicester, on the other hand, because they're a small club, I know they won the league recently, but because they've been spending a lot of the 2000s and the 90s and the AFL and that, they're not really like hyped up to be a strong team, but they really are a tough team. I'll take a point. 1-1, I would say too. I think try and get an early goal, but I would say 1-1 because they've got so much quality that can egg it. But if you offered me a 0-0 now, I'd bite your hand off.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of you there. I think 1-1's a good, not an unrealistic score prediction to go for. And obviously, we'd all take it, I think. But yeah.
Especially going into the Arsenal game next week, a home game where you will open with fans there.
Going into two games that we want to try and win. I think a 1-1 against a good Leicester side that would push us a little bit higher up towards the top four would definitely be a reasonable prediction and a reasonable goal to aim for. Yeah, but that's going to be it for this one.
The mark on you as well.
Yeah, and that's going to be it for this one, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know down in the comments section what you think, how you think Everton will get on. Leave us your score predictions. Also, make sure you check out the podcast if you want to see Terry hosting the quiz. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.